Hello and welcome to another custom action figure video. Today we're going to be customizing this Soap Studio 112 bank robber Joker from The Dark Knight. And I'm currently working on a line of 112 scale, Mezco Soap Studio Dark Knight trilogy figures. So this is going to be the first one that I customize for that setup. And I'll probably do a bunch of videos of those as we go, but I wanted to start with the Joker because I think this is going to be a really fun one to paint. But before I get into that, I want to quickly thank everyone for their support of the video for this guy. This is my custom McFarlane The Batman figure, and everyone just really came through with views, subscribers, and whatnot. So shout out to the new subscribers. Thank you so much for joining me on this. Thank you for sticking around and supporting, and I hope to keep doing stuff that you enjoy. I want to show you the head that originally came on this guy. This is what the head looked like, right? He's kind of googly-eyed. He's looking in different directions. The sculpt is decent, but, it's got the thing where the hair looks like it's a separate piece. And it just gives the figure a very plasticky look. And my goal is to make these look as realistic and believable as possible. Now, the paint job on it is actually pretty cool. I mean, it's a factory paint job, right? Like, it's not going to be as detailed as a custom job. But, there's some stuff to like about it. Here you can see these two next to each other, and obviously this is just a much better sculpt. I think this is probably a shrink of a Hot Toys Joker. Now, one thing that a lot of people do when they get a head like this is they spray it with gray primer. And I've talked about this in a couple other videos, but I mean, that's flesh colored, right? If you're talking about a Caucasian skin tone, like that's pretty right on, and it matches pretty well with the skin tone that's already on the figure. So I don't start with a primer coat. What I do is I just start detailing the skin. Now, this is going to be a layered process because the Joker in this movie doesn't have white skin. He's got regular skin, and then he paints his face white. So what we're going to do is start out with essentially painting it like a normal person, normal being without makeup on. We're going to layer the makeup on over it to give it the approximation of makeup on the actor's face. So the first thing I like to do is put the head in a state that I can more easily paint it. I made this a couple years ago. I just took a block of wood and I drilled some little holes in it and put some little wooden dowels in it, and then it looks kind of like they're heads on pikes or whatever. But this allows you to turn it, hold on to it without really touching and messing up the paint too much. You can see if you kind of stipple and flick paint onto it, in different shades and whatnot, it has a very lifelike look. So that's the kind of thing we're going to be starting with on this. The other thing I like to point out is the way people do facial hair. What I did for Jarrell here is this is watered down brown paint. If you water it down and then you layer it on gently, you get a nice kind of fade effect here. So it looks more like the way hair is naturally on, a beard. A lot of times people will just take the brown and they'll just paint along the beard, and then you get like just a hard line. And it's just not natural looking. I mean, it certainly gets the job done, but it doesn't give a natural kind of fade effect because hair thins as you come to a hairline. And so that's what we're trying to approximate here with something like this. All right, so these are the supplies I'm using. This is a set of Vallejo model paints that I got off Amazon. And then, of course, I have this golden fluid acrylics green gold color. This I got in an art supply store. I'm sure you can find this online. And then we've got brown. This is a Deco Art Americana. I got this at Michael's Crafts for, I think, like under $1, maybe $1.50. And then I'll also be using this clear gloss varnish. This is what you paint over the eyes to give them the nice glossy look, to make them look wet and a little bit more lifelike. Okay, so first thing I want to do we're going to flick some paint on this guy to add just like some of the little flecks and details and stuff that I've mentioned. I got a little bit of water just off camera there. I'm mixing a little bit of the paint with the water, and I've got this paper here to kind of show you the paint hitting it, right? So I'm going to do that same thing to his face, just randomly, right? So I'm going to do that a couple of times. You know, you kind of want to let it dry a bit so that you don't end up making like all of the little droplets like catch on each other and then forming a larger droplet. And that does the opposite of what we want in terms of like the little random kind of flecking that you get. Like even this right here is a little too big, so I'll take the brush and just kind of wipe it away. But that's our stage one. And so we'll do that a few times. I always start with kind of the mid one, and then we'll do a darker one, and then the lightest one we have. And that'll just give us a nice kind of mixture of different tones on the face that create a more realistic look. Okay, so we're still in the flicking process here. And I'm just doing a couple coats of this darker color. Now, one thing you can do that I recommend is take your brush and take some white paper and do that. You see how the first couple drops are pretty large? You want to get those big deposits out of the way so you don't end up with any huge blobs on the face. Rather than having like one big flick like that, you want to try to do it more like this, right? So it's a gradual thing. And I just kind of rotate the head as I'm doing it. And again, most of this is going to get covered up anyway, and you may be like, well, why even do it then? It makes a difference because, you know, if you think about it, like skin is not, got an extra little deposit there. Whoop. See, sometimes you get too much on the brush and then you do something like that. I like to keep a Q-tip handy just for dabbing away that kind of stuff. You know, skin isn't translucent, or I'm sorry, it's not a solid color. It's translucent, right? So if you cut yourself or, you know, a piece of skin flakes off or something, it's kind of whitish clear. That's because our skin is made of layers, and there's stuff under those layers that gives it the color. You know, the blood going through it, our vascular system, our capillaries, etc. When you do this kind of layering process, even if it's going to be covered by, you know, white Joker makeup, it still just lends to the realism of it. And that's why I like to do it, because I really like it when these things are as like realistic as possible. You see now how this is starting to get a lot more variation in it. And I haven't done the lightest color yet, so once we do that, that's going to help it pop even more. Again, you know, this just gives it like a much more lifelike kind of thing. And we haven't done any of, you know, the detailing yet, right? So this is just the base skin. But we'll probably do a little bit just to give it a little bit more depth, like underneath the chin. So what I'll do for that is water down some brown and some of that darker color, and then just kind of tap it into those crevices. And then where this darker paint was that we used earlier, I'm just going to take some of that. And so you can see that's what it looks like. I'll do a thing like this where I push the brush down and twist on it, and that fans it out a little bit. Splays out like that. You see how the brush hairs are split? And then you take something like that and just kind of stipple it, like dab it into these darker areas. It's not going to show up super well on camera, but as I'm doing it, but we'll get a closer look. Here I'm doing the cheekbones a bit, even though they'll be covered up, just to kind of show you the technique. Another place you do that, really anywhere that like there are natural shadows created on the head, you'll see that because this is a 3D form. So we've got shadows under the eyebrows, under the nose, under the mouth, etc. Those are the areas where you can look to do this kind of stuff, because what that does is just accentuate the natural shadows that are already there. And again, these are all going to be obliterated by his like black charcoaly makeup, but for the purpose of this video, to show you kind of how this works process wise, I think it's helpful. The hairline is another place you can darken up things. I mentioned that earlier with the Jor-El bit, like how you kind of make it a gradual thing. This is sort of the first step to that. And sometimes if the paint gets a little bit too heavy of a deposit, like we've got here on the hairline, then what I'll do is I'll just take my finger and I'll just kind of tap it. And what that does is just kind of disperse that paint a little bit more and soaks up some of the excess onto my finger and takes it away from the figure itself. Next up, we're going to start doing the hair. We're going to go with like a brown color for the hair, because Heath Ledger's hair was kind of a sandy brown color. a little bit of blonde in there, but that's essentially going to give us the deep shadows for the curls and everything. And then we'll go in with the green and lighten it up and make it look more like a dye job. Okay, so for the hair, we're going to take some just straight up brown paint. And again, it's on top of some dried paint. That's why you see multiple colors there. But we're going to get some water in our brush and we're going to mix the paint with the water. And then I take that and I just start doing kind of like a light wash layer to get going, right? So you'll see it starts to recede into the cracks and lower areas, and the raised areas stay the color of the resin here. That's what we want, because we want to start getting in those cracks. And notice how, but when I get to the hairline, that's when I'm really going to be more delicate with it. Because again, we want it to have a look where it kind of fades. This will take a few layers. You know, this isn't like a boom, boom, boom process, right? Like it takes a while. And so it does require a lot of patience. Now again, I don't want to go just like a straight brown line to his hair. So you see how I'm just gradually building it and letting it kind of soften as it gets to the edge there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this other kind of brush. It's smaller and has more of a point to it. It's called a round brush, and I'm just going to take some water and kind of blend it. Okay, so we've got the hair done now. I wanted to show you where it's at. So this is a couple of coats. Once I had the general wash down that we started with, I went in with more just straight up paint on the brush because I needed to get into these crevices, and that's just the best way to do that. Yeah, next up, filling in those gaps, eyeballs, and then hitting it with a coat of matte paint, and then we'll be off to the fun stuff. Okay, now I want to talk about the hardest part, which is the eyes. I used the light flesh color. This is the lightest color that came in that skin tone pack. And the reason I do that, I talk about this in my The Batman McFarlane custom video as well, is eyes aren't perfectly white, and so using a lighter color like that just makes them look more realistic. This isn't something I could do and record, so I had to do it and then talk about it like this. But you know, you take the brush and you just very gently kind of bring it through there with the paint on it. With this paint in particular, it's a little bit runnier, so you kind of have to let it build some viscosity and let it dry for a couple minutes, you know, in the air before you go in. And then I actually had to, I hit the bottom lid, which is not what I was wanting to do, so I had to go in with this pin again and just gently scrape it away. I don't know how other people do it. I've never seen anyone else paint eyes, but I know for me, every time there's some scraping involved. So keep that in mind if you have something like this, or a sewing needle, or you know, any kind of really tiny, you know, sharp object like that. It's really helpful for the small details. So now that he's pretty much done in like a regular looking person capacity, I'm going to hit him with the matte coat of clear finish, just to lock in the stuff that's already here, and then we'll go in with the Joker makeup. And actually, first I may paint the eyeballs, like the iris and the pupils in, and I'm going to have him so he's kind of looking up, because I think that's a very Joker thing. So I'll do that. Again, that'll happen off camera because I can't get that level of closeness and detail and record it at the same time. So I've actually decided, before I hit it with the matte coat, I'm going to make some of the kind of blonde colors of his hair, because I was just looking at some photos of him, and you can tell there's his natural color, which is a brown underneath there, and then it's got this kind of blonde that fades into the green. So I want to get that down first. This is tricky to do because blonde hair color is just like a really hard color to match. Like I'm not gonna paint a ton of it on there. We're gonna do more of like a dry brush technique. Actually, I'll show you on the paper here. We're gonna kind of do it like this, so it sort of fades into it. So I'm gonna start in the back. Starting in a less seen area is always the best move for this kind of thing, because if you mess up or if it's not right, like that's the part that's not going to get seen, especially once this turns green. And I'm just going super super light on this because I really just want to kind of like kiss it with the blonde. There's kind of a flat spot on his hair up top here, which is making it go on a little heavier than I want. But, you know, again, this is going to be green pretty soon anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. See how I'm going in a different direction than the hair? So by going, the hair goes this way, and by taking my brush this way, I'm just hitting the raised parts, and that keeps the crevices dark, which is what I want, because that's how we maintain our depth. So that's looking a lot more just accurate, I think, in general. You know, before it was a bit dark when it was just the brown. So let me just get some better light here. All right, since the hair's done, next I want to talk about painting the eyes in a little more detail. First step is I'm going to take brown, right? And I do this with every color eye, no matter what it is, no matter how light it is, you know, blue eyes, etc. I'll take some brown and I'll do like a little half circle, right? Depending on how, like, since he's going to be looking up through his eyes like this, or through his eyebrows like that, it'll be a half circle. If it was straight on, you know, it's most of a circle, right? Basically, you start with the brown like that, and that gives you a base. That gives you the outline for the eye that you need. Then I'll take the lighter color, whatever it is that I mix, and I'll do it inside of that half circle so that it keeps the brown outline and then has the lighter bit in the center. And then finally going with the black dot. Okay, so we've got the brown circles down, and we've got the lighter kind of half circles in there as well. But you can see how they're lighter in the middle. They've got that darker outline. Now they're not perfect because, again, you know, painting eyes is absolutely the hardest part. So before I use the clear gloss varnish, I'm going to seal it with the matte clear coat finish across the whole head, and then when we put the gloss on over that, that's when the eyes will really pop. Next, I'm going to add the clear varnish. Now I'm going to put this stuff in my little palette here on the black so you can see how it comes out. See how milky that is? When it dries, it's clear. When I first used this stuff, it kind of threw me because I was like, wait, I thought this was going to be like clear and shiny, but it does dry that way. And the thicker it's on there, the shinier it's going to be. So it'll probably be 2 coats. Now, I'm going to flip it upside down because I find it easier to do the other eye without the nose and everything else in the way. All right, now the white paint that I'm using is the same brand as the brown. It's the Deco Art craft store brand. The way that the makeup looks in the movie is it's kind of chalky a little bit, like it, you know, it doesn't get in the cracks of his forehead and that sort of thing. So we're going to emulate that as best as we can by going in with a pretty dry brush. You see how that's looking chalky? That's exactly what we want. The key here is we just don't want to overload it too much with paint. We want it to be pretty thin and dry to maintain that texture, because if it gets too wet, then it becomes too smooth and we lose that rough look to it. How do you all feel about Heath Ledger as the Joker compared to the other Jokers? I still have not seen the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. It looks cool, and I know he won an Oscar for it, and you know, I'm intrigued by that, but to me it's like I just get kind of tired of all this stuff that's like, just Smallville is like Superman before he was Superman, and Gotham is Gotham before he was Batman, and it's like, just make a show called Hey before the cool shit happens. You know what I mean? Like, because then they end up doing all the things that I feel like the character of Batman or Superman should be involved in, but they're not. And it almost looked like kind of a bummer, and I was like, I've been bummed out a lot lately. I don't really need to get that from my entertainment, but I have been meaning to check it out. So, you know, it's been on HBO forever, so one of these days I'll get into it. But Heath Ledger's performance was just incredible. I remember being kind of like, what? That's who they cast for it? Like, I wanted someone who looked more like the Joker. Yeah, and then I saw the trailer for the movie, and I was like, oh, he's going to win an Oscar for that. And, you know, he did. Well deserved. Something important to keep in mind as I'm doing this is if a person is applying this kind of makeup to their face, then there are natural like creases and wrinkles and whatnot that aren't going to get the makeup in them. Just like when we were painting the hair and we went over the ridges and the deeper crevice parts stayed dark. Same principle. So we're going to be trying to stay as true to that as we can here. That was one of the things I really appreciated about him in this role, is that I feel like he thought about a lot of that kind of stuff when he was developing the character. And I'm sure Chris Nolan had a lot to do with that too, but you know, the two of them and the writers and whatnot, like, really put so much thought into this whole universe that they built with these movies. And you know, I know a lot of people don't really appreciate the realism. They're like, oh, it's stupid, you know, just make Batman, you know. And I agree with that to an extent. Like, when it comes to the look of Batman, I think sometimes they go too far in the, like, it's got to be, you know, like a suit, like a motorcycle suit kind of thing. But I appreciate that, and I appreciate the notion that, like, they were really trying to go, like, if these people were real, how would this happen in the real world? And that's why I'm such a big fan of the Tumbler. And I know a lot of people, that Batmobile is kind of a polarizing one, but yeah, I love the design of it. I love the explanation. I love the sounds it makes. I love how it handles. I think it's just a brilliant design. And that's why you can see in part 1 of my video why I'm of my Tumbler build, why I'm making one, because I just think we should have had one that was more affordable in the 110, 112 scale arena. Okay, so that's the white paint done. So I'm happy with how that turned out. And then next we'll do the hair. And then once the hair is done, I'm going to do the eyes, the black around the eyes. And the hair is going to be a very similar process to last time, what we did with the kind of blonde highlights, where we're going to do the same thing with the green. Again, trying to be like not too excessive with the green, because we want it to be kind of a natural, gradual, like it's been green for a bit and he dyed it. Like, he's too busy you know, killing people and stealing money from the mob to be dyeing his hair all the time, so it should look kind of grown out. Okay, the hair is done, so I just want to show this in a little more detail here. You can see where I left the sideburns brownish and kind of along the hairline. So next up is going to be the eye makeup and the grin, and then this guy's going to be done. Okay, so we've got just a little bit of black paint here. Same thing as the white. We're gonna dry brush it on, and it's going to retain that sort of war paint painted on charcoaly look. Bearing in mind that I want to keep that lower lid from being covered, because it adds to the realism and just makes it a little creepier looking, I think. So that's a little heavy, so I'm gonna try to spread out what's there by kind of just dry brushing it, softening the edges. There's barely any paint on here that is still wet, and I'm using that to my advantage to really just kind of soften those edges. I'll probably try to figure out some kind of a music situation for videos like this, so that when I'm holding my breath trying to paint it, it's not totally silent. But you know, I don't know. I watch a lot of YouTube videos of people doing stuff like this, and sometimes the music sucks, and so I don't want to make anyone endure music. I think I got it. Look how much more menacing it is with that black on there. So dope. So same thing here. I'm trying to do this in a way you can see it. Get underneath the eye without doing too much. So you can see just how intricate these paint jobs can get. You'll see people online and you ask them, like, how'd you do that? And they just go like, oh, really small brush, ha ha ha. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's part of it, but I don't know. I don't like it when people are stingy with resources and techniques and stuff. So I that's part of what this channel is about, is sharing that stuff, because I'm somebody who wants to know this stuff too, because I love it and I love doing it, and I think it's important that we share, because I'm a big fan of the phrase a rising tide raises all ships, or something to that effect. I want all of our ships to rise. The fire rises. All right, I think that's going to do it on the eyes. Okay, next we're going to do the lips. The lips and the paint for the lips softens as it goes up the scar line. If you dab it, it won't mix with the white as much, which is the outcome that we desire here. Just right in the lips. Get in that one little crevice where he's got that extra bit of scarring. That's looking like the Joker. I remember seeing this movie in the theater and hearing a girl say to a friend after, like, as we were walking out, she goes, "That was Heath Ledger?" That must be a cool thing, for an actor to, you pour yourself into a role. And I really wish he got to stick around and see how much love he received for this role, and just how universally appreciated and praised it was. All right. The last thing I need to do is I need to find a way to make this hole smaller so that it can fit on that skinny little tiny neck peg on the Soap Studio figure. And I think the move for that is hot glue. So I'll just fill this with some hot glue and then stick it on the neck really quick. And as it cools down, it'll take the form of the peg and it'll hold snugly. But yeah, I'm really pleased with this. I thought maybe the head looked a little skinny. Sometimes these casts can warp a little bit, but now that it's painted, it's looking pretty much right on. All right, and this guy is all done. Once again, really happy with how this turned out. I think these Soap Studios figures were better than most people remembered. There are some issues, the hands are a little bit big, and the head sculpts that they come with as a default are not very good. But their tailoring is pretty phenomenal. They come with a lot of cool props and whatnot, and yeah, so I think you put the right head on it and it ends up looking pretty good. And I'm looking forward to doing more of these. I've got pretty much the whole main cast of these movies. I've got a Ra's al Ghul in the works, Alfred, Lucius Fox, etc. If you have one of these figures and you're looking to upgrade it, hopefully this gives you a nice guide on how you might approach the paint job. And I'll put a link to Action Figure Custom's eBay page in the description in the show notes here, because he's where I get most of my head sculpts. But yeah, I needed a win creatively. I was working on that Batmobile and it was quite difficult. And I said, you know what? Let me just do something that's going to, I can knock out in an afternoon. And all in all, this went pretty quickly. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Please check out my other videos. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I try to put something up at least once a week. My channel's newer, so I'm building it and it's starting to grow, and I'm really appreciative of the people who have been riding with me so far. I've got a book coming out, a graphic novel that I wrote and drew called Retroactive. It's kind of James Bond meets Groundhog Day. It's a really fun time loop espionage story. So I'll be putting that trailer at the end of this, so you can check that out if you'd be so kind as to stick around. If you go to retroactivecomic.com, you can also see the trailer there and order the book from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local comic shop. There's links for that stuff. So, yeah, thanks again for hanging out, and keep your head on swivel.